Lester Abinger, the Florida Recreation and Park Association Legislative Representative, and with me, as usual, is Steve Bosquet, the Capitol Bureau Chief for the Tampa Bay Times. Steve, this year the session's going to be in January and February as opposed to the usual March and April time. We've gone through what we call here the interim committee meetings beginning in September and occurring every couple of weeks. What are your takeaways from the interim committee meetings as we tee the session up, so to speak?
I think Floridians wish that they took these interim committee weeks a little more seriously because they're not as substantive as they should be.
Right.
Lots and lots of window dressing and presentations and not a lot of bills moving. However, having said that, they've begun to poke away at Rick Scott's budget proposal, and I'm hearing a lot of things that suggest to me that Rick Scott's budget is going to be facing some serious challenges among his fellow Republicans in the legislature. In the House, they just think it's way too big. It's $87 billion.
$2 billion more than the current budget.
Rick Scott says we have the money. He's got a lot of priorities. This is his last year in office, and I can't estimate or I can't emphasize enough that the political dynamics at work with people running for other offices and finishing up their term. So I think the budget is an area where it has come to light that members have really serious concerns about his priorities, or they want to spend more in other areas.
Right, and we have the implications of both the hurricane recovery and the hurricane refugees, if you will, from Puerto Rico, which have a tremendous impact on the social services and education part of the budget. So it is a series of hard choices, right?
That's correct. We're in a moment, and it just varies by cycle. We're in a moment where I would say, with all due respect, the Orlando area delegation is not among the most powerful delegation blocks in Tallahassee at the moment, and that's where the big impacts of
they need the help.
They need the help.
Yeah.
And they've got some strong people like Representative Bob Cortez, and they've got Representative Renee Plasencia and others who've been on this issue of the Puerto Rican relief issue. But that's still going to have to play out in the regular session.
Right.
Yeah.
And you alluded to the fact this is Governor Scott's last session. You were just back from covering the cabinet meeting, and you told me that he has very few cabinet meetings scheduled for next year. What are the implications of that as we look at the session and the fact that the governor is, in essence, a lame duck now?
Well, yeah, but his popularity has gone up since the hurricanes hit, since the Hurricane Irma hit. And I would say that in fairness to Rick Scott, everything he does, including like going to the water fountain to get a drink of water, is going to be seen as some sort of political play for a U.S. Senate race.
Right.
And that can be easily overstated.
Sure.
He's still the governor of the state. The crime rate continues to drop, and the economy is humming along fairly well. How much of that credit goes to Rick Scott is a debate we'll never resolve.
Right.
But the point is that generally speaking, going into his last year, he's in a better place than maybe he would have been a year or two ago.
Great answer. That's very perceptive. Now we've had, and I know people are aware of it, what some might call misbehavior in the Capitol and allegations of various things. What effect will that have on the session going forward?
Very briefly, I think that you've got allegations of sexual harassment against a very powerful and longtime Senator Jack Latvala from Clearwater that's being investigated by a independent third-party special master retired DCA judge who's going to present his findings, and maybe by the time some people see this, it will have happened. That's very much in flux, and the Senate is going to have to decide what action to take. I think it's a major distraction and a preoccupation. I had a long conversation with Joe Negron, the Senate president, who spoke very proudly about how we're following the rules, we're following a process, and there's going to be a swift and specific conclusion to this whole thing. So.
Well, that's comforting in a sense, I think, to everybody who's involved. So. Perhaps not as much of a distraction as some people think. We're in a political year. In 2018, all the members of the House are up, Attorney General, Commissioner of Agriculture, Chief Financial Officer, the whole cabinet, and the governor's race. Any quick observation on that?
Just that I'd say on Commissioner of Agriculture Adam Putnam's in a good place on the Republican side because he's raising boatloads of money, and he seems to be much better known than any other potential candidate at the moment. It's very, very early. It's extremely early. And these races are pretty wide open on both sides. And this is just one of those, this is the year in that 8-year cycle of term limits where everything is on the table.
Right.
To me, it makes for a much more politically charged legislative session than you would have otherwise. Lots of politics. If you like politics, this is going to be a good place to be in January and February.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. We look forward to continuing these discussions as we move into the 2018 session.
Okay.
Have a great holiday.
Yeah, you too.